Welcome to this tutorial on how to sew the Yoalli skirt by Telabeja. You can find the link to this pattern in the description of this video. The first step is to cut the pattern pieces after you've cut the paper pattern in your size. For the buttoned version, cut at the markings for version X. For the version with a zipper, cut the markings for version Y. The seam allowance of 1 cm is included in the pattern, so you don't have to worry about adding any while cutting. I cut all of my pattern pieces. Now we sew the back piece to the side back pieces. Do the same for version Y, where you have 2 back pieces. I'm finishing the seam afterwards with my overlock, but you can also use a zigzag stitch. Afterwards, I'm ironing the seam flat and preparing it for top stitching. I'm top stitching the seam allowance to the skirt with a regular straight stitch and a matching thread. The next step is to sew the side back and side front pieces together. Similarly to the step before, we finish the seam afterwards. I also ironed the seam and I'm top stitching it in place. Now I'm finishing all open vertical edges. Because now we're going to sew the side front pieces to the front pieces. And you want to sew only until the markings for your slit if you want to sew one. I'm only sewing one slit, so on this side I'm going to sew right up until the marking. Then I'm ironing the seam flat open so I can top stitch both sides of the slit to each side. I'm top stitching one side all the way down. And for the slit, I'm top stitching one side all the way down and the other one just a slit. Right up till the notch. I'm now cutting the interfacing, which should stabilize the part where the buttonholes and buttons go. I'm carefully ironing the interfacing to the inside of the skirt. Then I'm folding over 1.5 centimeters at the front on each side and ironing it flat. The next step is to top stitch the 1.5 centimeters we just folded and ironed over. sewing the waistband to the skirt. For version X, the right side should be facing the wrong side of the skirt. You should also leave 1 centimeter on each side. Afterwards, fold over the waistband right sides facing each other and sew as close as possible to the skirt. I'm sewing the waistband shut on the short side. Before turning it inside out, I recommend clipping the corners. After turning the waistband inside out, you can fold in the seam allowance on the other long edge and iron it in place. Then you can top stitch the waistband horizontally to close it completely. For version Y, you should sew the waistband to the skirt right sides facing each other first. Then you can pin the zipper to one side, but be careful to pin it only until the first half of the waistband. I'm using my zipper foot for this. For sewing the other side to the zipper, it's important that you match up the waistband seams to get an even look. Now I'm sewing the other side of the zipper, and remember, we're only starting halfway through the width of the waistband. Afterwards, you can close the skirt in the back to reveal your neatly sewn in zipper. This is what it should look like from the right side. Now for the tricky part. I messed up a bit and I sewed the zipper a bit too far in, but in general you just need to fold the waistband in half and turn in the seam allowance. Now you can proceed just like in version X, fold in the seam allowance and iron it down. In my case, I hand sewed the waistband since my fabric was not fit for ironing and it's quite slippery. Then you can top stitch your waistband shut just like for version X. If you have a stretchy fabric, I recommend using a twin needle. For both versions, the next step is to finish the hem. I'm folding over 1 centimeter and top stitching it down to finish the hem. Now the last step is to sew the buttonholes and buttons. I have marked my locations and I'm sewing each buttonhole with my machine. I hand sew the buttons to the opposite side and the skirt is done. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and see you in the next one. You can also combine the skirt with the Yoalli Dress bodice pattern, which you can also find on my Etsy.